Hello everybody. What we're going to be doing in this series of videos is to create a REST API application with Phalcon v6. The goal is for this to serve as a tutorial, but also as a means to see how you can use Phalcon for your application, not being restricted by different methodologies or different architectures. So we have the project that was just created on GitHub. This is the 1.x branch, which follows the master one. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make a couple of changes to the README. And the first thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that we have a development environment to run our application. For that, we're going to use Docker, and I've already created a couple of Docker files and accompanying files, so I'm just going to paste them in here. I'm not going to bore you with the details. You're going to be able to see them as you look at this project on GitHub. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder called resources, and there's a reason for that, which I will explain shortly. And in here we just need to copy a few files. Let me quickly find them. What this Docker file does is it installs the version that you want. We're going to start from version 8.2, 8.3 and 8.4. That's what we're going to be supporting. It copies some configuration files, which as you can see is supervisor, PHP and Nginx, and it will install the necessary extensions. We're going to have MySQL as the database, MariaDB in particular, and we're also going to have access to Composer. And supervisor is going to be the one that will control whether Nginx will be running or not. We also need a Docker Compose file. And let me paste the contents very quickly. We're setting up an 8.2 service. The Docker file that we have in the resources Docker is set up in such a way that it accepts parameters and then it builds the environment accordingly. So for this container, we're going to have the 8.2 version, and we have necessary environment variables, the network, the cache, and so on and so forth. This one is the 8.3, 8.4, and we also have the database, which is based on MariaDB 10.6, and also Redis. Actually, let's make that Redis 7. That would be fine. So all we will need to do is run docker compose build, and that will start building our environment. But let's stop it for a sec. We forgot that we have this guy here, the project name. I've created a few projects like this, and it is my personal opinion that you should prefix the names of your containers so that you have minimum conflicts. As such, what happens is this particular file reads the env file, and then it tries to check whether there is an actual project underscore name variable, and then it prefixes that with your prefixes that to the name of each container. And this way, whenever you do the list, the Docker PS, you're able to see the resources and the containers available to your project alone. So let's quickly create an env file. And what we're going to do is we're going to run the project name. And let's call this rest. And also database. Actually, I have them all copied here. Let me just copy them over. It's going to be easier. Okay. So it's going to be REST DB, our database. It's going to be root, secret, Phalcon, and UTF-8 is the car set. So now we can run the environment and we're not going to have any warnings. It's going to start loading everything and building each of the environments. Of course, once you do this once, then you're going to have your environments ready. So all you have to do is just bring the whole thing up, and then you can enter any container depending on the PHP version that you want, and work on the application whenever necessary. After a little bit of wait, you do get the message that all the environments have been built, and all we have to do is docker compose up -d, d as daemon. So it's going to bring up all the environments up, and it's going to allow us to start working on them. In order to enter an environment, all we have to do is docker exec -it REST API 8.2 bin bash. And that is fine that we cannot find the vendor bin folder. We haven't done anything with Composer yet. So we're going to utilize certain packages with Composer, and those packages are going to be, of course, Phalcon. But before that, let's write certain things in our Composer file. So first and foremost, we're just going to do Composer require extpdo. So that will be something that will create a Composer file, and it will add the requirement for extpdo. Also mb string, let's put that there. No installed packages. Okay. There's my Composer JSON, and you see these guys there. Of course, we need to add some metadata, if you like, the description for the package and what this will do. I'm just copying some stuff here, and then it's gonna be REST API v6 framework and so on and so forth, MIT license and all that. We're gonna have the configuration and the replace. Let's dump those in here. I have made a file before this in order to speed up the video and not to bore you with a lot of typing, so that's why I'm copying and pasting. Let's reformat this. The reason for these polyfills here and the replace is because we don't want these packages to be installed at all. We are going to have mb string and c type in our environment, so we don't need them to be installed again. Alright, so this is our initial Composer file. So Composer update, that's perfectly fine. Now what we need to do is we need to create the initial structure of the project. To do that, we're gonna utilize the PDS skeleton package. what PDS skeleton does is it offers suggestions as to how your library or your package should be structured. It tries to bring some uniformity in all the packages. Many of us have gone online and have inspected different packages offered by different vendors, different users if you like, and a lot of them do have the src folder where your source is, the test folder, and all that stuff. But you go and see package number 2 and the code is located in a lib folder. So what PDS skeleton tries to do is it tries to bring some uniformity in it, and once you install it, of course, in the dev, it should be down here in the dev. And actually, let me move the dev section a little bit further up so I have them close together with my main packages after the require. There you go, so I can see them very quickly if I need to. So what we do is we run vendor bin PDS skeleton, and it has validate, generate, and test. So if I do validate, you're going to see that it tells us that there's the optional bin not present, optional config, docs public, source tests, log changes between releases, and so forth. Note that it does say for the most of them that they're optional. It does not force you to install anything or to create anything, but it just gives you a suggested structure. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a generate here, and it's going to generate all these folders and files for us, and we're going to keep them until we decide to either we don't need them or they're valuable. So for instance, for the contributing part, we can just paste this file. This one came from the main Phalcon, C Phalcon, and of course it's pretty much a straight copy, but this one needs to change to Phalcon, not C Phalcon. We have a changelog file which will have this, and then we have a bin folder, a config folder. So for the bin folder we don't have anything, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a git keep file so that it stays in the repository. And then for the config folder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy a sample env file and a sample env example file. Let's copy these. So this one is what is going to run in the CI. This is the example that I have created. The docs folder will be utilized later, but for now let's copy a git keep. For the public folder we just need an index.php file because that's what we're going to use to run the application and nothing else. Actually declare strict types, keep that there. The resources folder already has our Docker. The source folder has nothing. The tests folder has nothing. And for now, everything looks okay. Actually, on the tests folder, what I need to do is I need to create an output directory, and this is what I have decided beforehand. And inside the output directory, I'm going to throw a git keep file. And the reason being, I want this output folder to be kept and created within Git, but right after it's been created, I'm going to put it in the ignore list because this folder is going to be holding the PHP unit cache. It's going to be holding coverage information, and anything that tests produce is going to be in this folder. So this is a volatile environment. We don't want to keep it in our Git. The next thing we want to do is we want to install additional packages that we will need. So for the composer JSON file, we're going to need clearly the .env library from vlucas. And also we're going to utilize the Finks package by Rob Morgan. That will be dealing with our database. For quality control, we're going to utilize PHP Code Sniffer and PHP Stan. With the power of video editing, we have installed Finks. Now we need to install PHP Unit. And now that PHP Unit has been installed, we also need to install PHP Stan. And now that PHP Stan has been installed, actually let me make a small change here. We need to install Code Sniffer. That includes all the development packages that we have and the main packages that we need for this application. However, we do need to bring Phalcon in as well. So composer require Phalcon, and the version will be, actually let me do it with the code in here. That's going to be easier. So, and the version will be this 6.0.x dev. What that will do is it will pick up from the Phalcon GitHub repository through packagist, of course, the latest version, the latest commit rather, that is available in the 60x branch. Phalcon v6 is not ready for production yet. We're still missing the PHQL parser, which is the main database parser to work with models and metadata and so on and so forth. However, it does offer at the moment the data mapper connection, which we will utilize in this project in order to have access to our database and develop this application. The parser for PHQL is currently under development. We have been working on this for several months, but it is a significant amount of lines, and we do have a lot of work to do still just to finish that parser. But once the parser is done, then we will be able to release the first alpha version and then subsequently beta and the final version of v6. As a reminder, Phalcon v6 is a pure PHP implementation, and it is not optimized. You will see a lot of, if you start browsing the code, you will see a lot of different things in it, which will not make that much of sense, but it was a pure copy, if you like, and translation from the Zephyr version to that. And the reason we left it that way is because we are able to do a diff between the v5 version, which is written in Zephyr, and then the v6 version. And that allows us to make sure that any functionality that has been put into one version is also in the second version. So let's start committing some of the files into our repository. I'm going to utilize PHP Storm just to quickly add the files that we need. And this one doesn't seem to work very well. It's okay. We can add them manually. Let's go to the other terminal here. Exit. Alright, so first and foremost, we need to play around a little bit with the git ignore. So the git ignore needs to have certain entries. As you can see, we are left with a few things here, so we need the cache, config, local, composer lock, vendor. We're going to ignore also the .env file. Before we do the env, we need to make the commit for the config folder over there, and we need also bash history. So first status, we have these modified and these are added. Okay, let's do git add git ignore. Let's add the config. Then what we need is we need to add the git add tests output. And now we can add the output folder. See if this one will make this work. Yes, it does. So let's continue on this side. What we're going to do is we're going to add the it's not 100% here. I'll do a little bit from the code base. Resources. Okay, so let's have a look what else we have here. We have the changelog and contributing. Okay, so now we need to add the .env file in the git ignore as well. Let's throw a git keep file in the source folder so that it becomes part of our code. And then the docs does have one, and then the bin does have one. Okay. So there we go. The project is already running. Now, in this file here in the index.php, let's throw an echo hello everyone. Hello world, why not? If we bring our browser up, this is not going to work with localhost. It's going to work only with the container that we want. So in order to find the IP address of the container that we require, and in our case we're going to use the 8.2 container, all we need to do is docker ps, and we're going to find that we have all these names, all these containers running. So docker inspect REST API 88.2, and once this information comes up, we're going to need to get this IP address. And on our browser, you see hello world. This is nothing to it. It's just an echo that we put into this file. We don't have anything running. It's just that the Docker environment has initiated supervisor and then nginx and so on and so forth, and it actually reads from the public index.php to start our application. So this way we can start developing here, and that would allow the application to start working, and we can either use the browser or Insomnia, Postman, PHP Storm, anything that you would require to send requests and see the data back. Some additional things that we need to do is to install configuration files. But first, let's add our index. But also we will need to add configuration files for the packages that we have installed. So we have PHP stan, PHP unit, and PHP code sniffer. Let's do that. Actually, I can delete these. There. A bit of cleanup over there. So let's start with code sniffer. We're going to create a new file. And we're going to use this. So we will have a Phalcon REST API v6 coding standards. They're going to be based on PSR 12, and they're going to run in the src and tests unit folder. Clearly, if we run this right now, it is going to complain that there's no folder tests unit, but we'll get to that. Let's create a PHP stan file. And all we will need is just the source folder here. for PHP unit. For PHP unit, you're going to notice a few things. Let's use that as PHP unit tests. For starters, the namespace schema is actually pointing to the vendor PHP unit folder, and that is to ensure that the schema always follows what you have installed. We have a bootstrap file which we have not created yet, and our output will be in the tests output.php unit result cache. I did mention earlier that this folder was created for those files. So let's create the php unit.php file, which will be used to bootstrap PHP unit. And this file is nothing more than ensuring that the xdebug mode is coverage, reporting is eall, load up the vendor autoloader or produce an error, and just that's it. So if we run now PHP unit in our environment, it complains that the tests unit folder is not found, which is correct. And if we run php stan, no files found to analyze. Same thing with phpcs, tests unit does not exist. And these are expected errors that we're seeing on screen because we don't have the unit folder. And even if we did, it will just say that there were no files available to test. What we also need to do is we need to standardize the way that we call these commands. As you noticed, I already made a couple of mistakes in trying to run these files. So what we're going to do, instead of trying to run them with the command line and trying to go into the vendor folder, we're going to utilize Composer to do all these things for us. With the Composer scripts node here in the JSON file, we're able to add whatever we need in terms of running as aliases on what Composer can do. Before we do that, we can also take advantage of the PDS Composer script names package, which, just like the skeleton one, it tries to bring some uniformity towards how Composer scripts are to be called. So, for example, for PHP stan, analyze or analyze with Z or an S is pretty normal. CS or CS fix would be acceptable for code sniffer, and tests would be acceptable for running tests. This is not necessary, but it's nice to start having some uniformity in the packages, because then when people download the library and want to use it by means of developing on it, they know exactly what to run. So we're gonna bring this package in. And what we're also gonna do is we're gonna start writing our script names under the scripts node of Composer JSON. So analyze, it will be vendor bin can can use CS for code sniffer. And we don't need this standard. All we need is phpcs.xml. We can do the same thing for csfix, and we can run the php cbf. And finally, let's do one for tests. We're just going to call it test unit. And for PHP unit, we're going to do -c PHP unit .xml .dist. By doing that, we created different aliases that Composer can actually use in order to run. Just in case, let's do a Composer update. And now we can run Composer analyze, which will invoke PHP stan, Composer CS, and test unit. And these are the examples, these are the outputs that we expected because we don't have the tests unit folder. Now let us commit all these files, the new files that we have, and then we can use the next thing that we can do is set up our project with GitHub Actions. One more thing we need to do is we need to add a cache directory for Composer and make sure we have that into our git ignore. And this way, if we do a Composer update, it's going to create that folder, and it's going to load its own files that are cached, but it's not going to be in our code base. So let's start committing these files. And PHP unit. We can safely ignore that warning from SonarQube for now. And now what we need to do is we need to create a workflow for GitHub. Yes, that's a GitHub. And then we're gonna do another one called workflows. And in here we're gonna put our main workflow. I already have the file ready, so I'm just pasting it here. And what this file will do is it will set up our extensions. These are the extensions that we require. It will have one node with PHP CS, the quality gate, that's how we called it. it will run on PHP 8.2, 3, and 4. Check out our code, cache composer, and then run PHP CS, run PHP stan, and then the next part would be the unit tests, again running on 8.2, 3, and 4. It will have the MariaDB service ready if we need it to. At least for the time being we're not, but it's there. Then it will do exactly the same thing. Check out the code, set up PHP of course, and then bring the cache of the composer, and then it will copy the env file because it will be needed. It will make sure that we have the coverage folder. Then it will run any migrations that is to do for a little bit later, and then it will run the composer test unit coverage. And again, we don't have this command, we're just going to add it in a minute, and it will be ready. And finally, what it does is it will do a Sonar Cloud scan, and it will upload the code coverage results to SonarQube. Before we proceed and we finalize this video, let's have a quick look at the composer JSON and what we can do. Here we need to create one entry for migrate, and migrate will just run Finks migrate. Finks, if you recall, would be the database migration tool that we're going to use. It's from Rob Morgan. And as far as the code coverage is concerned, what we're going to do is, for starters, we're going to add display all issues here, but also add two more commands, and those will be one for coverage and one for coverage HTML if we want to visually see what is going on. So what we're gonna do, just in case, it's not necessary but it's nice to have it updated, then we're gonna look at Git, added GitHub Actions setup, and that is the initial setup of our project. Although we have literally done nothing for the application, we have set up a reasonably good project structure so that we can start doing our code quality, run our application, and develop our application, of course. In the next video, we're going to start adding the building blocks to start our application. We're going to add tests, we're going to add the index.php and start enabling Phalcon into the application so that we can start looking at results. Thank you for watching, and take care.